The challenges facing our teens today mean that more than ever, we need to be there to support them and encourage them. The Dr.Stem Show is here to provide discussions about topics that will help promote healthy relationships, self-image, and success for teens, parents, and the community. Our young people can achieve more in life than they ever dreamed possible. The Dr.Stem Show, hosted by Dr. Stem Malatini, will foster these discussions and encourage your participation.
When most people hear about adolescents, teenagers, a lot of people start rolling their eyes and talking about the challenges that they are facing raising their teenagers. That conversation almost always ends up with people talking about how hard, how difficult it is to raise a teenager, instead of us talking about the challenges that the teenagers are facing. Our teenagers today are facing challenges that require us as adults to provide support and encouragement to them. What are the challenges, you might ask? In the upcoming weeks, we are going to be covering several, in fact, a lot of those challenges. However, today, we are only going to cover 10 of the most important challenges that have been discussed in research as well as voiced by the parents and the teenagers themselves. Those 10 challenges are the teenager's body and image, the search for identity, the scheduling or the balancing of school, work, play, and sports for some, the high parental expectation, their health and wellness. The other topic that we need to cover that we will be talking about is drug and alcohol abuse. This is a very important topic, and I know most of you are nodding your heads and saying, yes, we want to hear about the drug and alcohol abuse. The other topic is search for role models, conflict at home, sex and the teenage pregnancy. This has been a problem for many for a lot of years. And last but not least, the number 10 is in-person cyberbullying as well as in-person bullying. Welcome to the Dr. Stem Show, a show that is geared to bridge the gap between the parents, the teachers, and the community. What is bridging the gap? Bridging the gap, we're going to be talking and elaborating more on the challenges that the teenagers are facing. We are also going to be inspiring, motivating, empowering, as well as educating you, the teenager out there, the parents especially, and the teachers, as well as the communities where the teenagers reside in and work in. I am Dr. Stem Mahlatini. My full name is Stembile Mahlatini. I'm originally from Zimbabwe. I'm actually known as Stem. It's a nickname that I was given when I emigrated to the United States 27 years ago. People couldn't pronounce my name. And I know even when I say Stembile now, almost always people roll their eyes and say, can you say that again? So that was one of the challenges that I had as a teenager, having to say my name over and over again. So they named me Stem for short, Stembile. I was born and raised in Zimbabwe and came to the United States when I was 18 years old. Yes, I said 18. That means I was still a teenager. I had a lot of challenges that I faced as a teenager. I came here without anybody that was here with me as far as having my parents or relatives that I knew. I didn't know anybody being in the United States, but I knew one thing. I knew that I wanted an education. I knew that I wanted to go back home and make a difference. So I came to get an education in the United States with no support and no money, might I add. My parents didn't have enough money to send me to school. So how did I make it, you might ask? You're a doctor now. How did you get to being an 18-year-old that came to the United States with no parents, with no support? Well, guess what? They call this the land of opportunity. And that opportunity doesn't come knocking on your door. You have to knock on the door. I came knocking for that opportunity in the United States. So I'm here to tell the story as well as to inspire and motivate all those teenagers that think that they don't have a chance in this world, especially here. I actually was working 2 jobs when I came here. I worked as a nurse's aide in a nursing home. I also worked in a group home where I was helping the mentally challenged. That's how I got my money for school. I went to school part-time. It takes everybody else 4 years to get a bachelor's degree, but mine took a little longer than 4 years because I personally had to pay for that money, 1 class at a time. I know a lot of people say, well, I don't have enough money to go to school. And I tell you that I'm a witness here. I took 1 class at a time, and as a result, I ended up finishing my education just taking 1 class at a time. There will be many challenges that you face as a teenager. How did I face mine? I'm one of those kids that always wanted to talk to adults, to seek assistance from adults, to talk to those that were in charge that could help me out. So I'm very outspoken. No wonder why I ended up doing the work that I do. I provide counseling services. I'm a therapist. A licensed psychotherapist means I counsel people, individual counseling, group counseling, and family counseling. My pride and joy is my office that I have in a local high school where I'm actually available to these youngsters 5 days a week. I'm also available to the parents, but I find myself being a great support for the teachers in the school system. We will be right back.
The challenges facing our teens today mean that more than ever, we need to be there to support them and encourage them. The DrStem Show is here to provide discussions about topics that will help promote healthy relationships, self-image, and success for teens, parents, and the community. Our young people can achieve more in life than they ever dreamed possible. The DrStem Show, hosted by Dr. Stem Malatini, will foster these discussions and encourage your participation.
We are now going to elaborate on those 10 most important challenging things that the teenagers are going through. The body image that the teenagers go through. You know, I remember when I was a teenager, the thing that I remember the most is I was tall and skinny, and I just didn't feel good about myself when I became a teenager. That is from age 12, 13. I thought I was taller than everybody else. People made fun of me. I thought I was really ugly. I mean, and that's the honest truth, because a lot of people said, what do you mean you were ugly? But that's how teenagers feel. When us as adults are looking at them and saying, but you're beautiful, the way that they see themselves is totally different from the way that the adults saw. I saw myself as ugly. I saw myself as inadequate. I didn't think I was good enough. So my body image was not good at all. As we speak. But I knew that I had to search for my own identity, which is the second thing that we talk about. I knew I had to find myself, I had to find who I am, so that I could be able to identify myself, to have the right body image, to have the right facial expressions when I'm talking to people, to be able to stand tall when I'm among people, and for people to be able to look at me and say, oh, that's Stembile, that's Stem. Who am I? Who was I going to be? My search for identity is what brought me to the United States of America. I came to get an education as a way to search for my identification. My parents always emphasized that education is key. They always told us that if you want to be a better person, if you want a better life, you have to get an education. They always related your identity with education. Because if you're not educated, then you're a nobody. That's how I grew up. That's how my parents believed it. And you know what? I'm not regretting that they instilled that in me to say, seek an education, find out what the world is learning out there, and become the best that you can be. So I think having that message brought me here and encouraged me to work the 2 jobs to be able to pay for the school myself, and to know that I didn't want to do anything else except get an education. That way I can get a good job, good paying job, because I promised that I'll be able to support the people back home, which I am able to do now. scheduling school, work, and sports. As a teenager, this was difficult. I like to play a lot. I know my mother had a difficult time trying to have us do our homework. She had a difficult time having us do sports and taking off the uniforms, because we used to wear uniforms, and I tell this story all the time, where my mother had to struggle to have me take off one of my school uniforms because we didn't have the money to buy a new uniform. So I know that was a challenge for her to be able to get us to do our homework. But that's when our father came in, which for most people is a single parenthood today, and they must not have the father, or they might not have a mother present. But it was helpful for me to have both parents available to be able to help me with my scheduling of school, work, and play. I can't call it scheduling, to be honest with you. They helped me to balance it, because when they said it's time for homework, I knew it was time for homework, and they were serious about it. The high parental expectations, that is, every parent expects you to get good grades. As my parents did, they expected me to be able to have a good education. So those expectations were the drive for me to be able to finish my high school and come to the United States to pursue my college education. I'm the oldest of 7 children. So not only did I have the high parental expectation, but I also have and had the expectation of my siblings, 6 of them. They all looked up to me. They wanted to know if I had an education. They wanted to know if I was doing well, because if I didn't do well, then they also didn't feel the obligation that they needed to do well. I find that with the families that I work with, that most of those children will sit there and say, but you didn't do this for so and so, and you were not as tough to my brother as you are to me. So I know that high expectations are very important for the teenagers to be able to be aware of, as well as the parents to know that the children will be comparing. They will talk about how you treated the firstborn or the secondborn, or how you treated their brother that is different from how you treat them. The other point and challenge was health and wellness. I know I was joking earlier on as I was preparing for the show, and I said health and wellness. I'm coming from Africa. We didn't even have the food to talk about health and wellness. And that's the honest truth. Most of those teenagers and children in Africa, they don't have the food to be able to have the luxury of balancing their health, of balancing their wellness. However, coming here, I knew that I have to watch what I eat. I have to know to exercise my body. The most challenge about health and wellness that the teenagers are facing today is on depression, anxiety. I have noticed that we also have a lot of children that are cutting themselves as a way to soothe their emotions. And a lot of parents are in question as to how do they resort to cutting themselves and feeling that pain. That's one of those topics that we'll be exploring in the coming weeks, where we'll have professionals that are experts in treating the adolescents and the teenagers that are self-cutters as a way of soothing themselves.
The challenges facing our teens today mean that more than ever, we need to be there to support them and encourage them. The DrStem Show is here to provide discussions about topics that will help promote healthy relationships, self-image, and success for teens, parents, and the community. Our young people can achieve more in life than they ever dreamed possible. The DrStem Show, hosted by Dr. Stem Malatini, will foster these discussions and encourage your participation.
Now back to me. How did I deal with depression and anxiety? Honestly, I didn't know that the term was depression or anxiety. All I knew was I got so worried and I got so scared when it came to my exams, when it came to not doing well in school, when I didn't do what my parents expected of me. They say it takes a village to raise a child. In Africa, that was very true, especially in Zimbabwe, where I grew up, because what they did was, if you see somebody next door, if you see a church member, they are looking at you at what you're doing. They are telling you not to do what you're doing. Guess what? You cannot look at them in the eye and say, you're not my parent. You can never do that. And I know even now, I'm one of those that roll their eyes and frown when I hear a child saying, you're not my parent, so you can't tell me that, because I know better. that I was raised by a village. And I cannot up to today, or even when I was a teenager, tell an adult that you are not my parent, because I knew that my parents were talking to them and would hear about how I did when they meet with those people. So my depression, anxiety, I used to talk to adults. I talked about a lot of things. I asked a lot of questions, which when I was going through something, I knew to talk to somebody else that was going through it, or an adult that would be able to help me with whatever problems that I was going through. And most of the time, trust me, it worked. And I don't remember having to be diagnosed and taking any medications at that time. And you know why? Because we don't have those resources. Because I don't want the children that need the medications that I need of that treatment to say, well, Dr. Stem said she didn't have to take medication. We didn't have those resources. We didn't have the right people to diagnose us with the depression, anxiety, the resources that the teenagers have today. So I want you to be able to seek those resources to be able to deal with that depression and that anxiety, because some people do need the medication, but it always goes together with that counseling. That means talking to your teachers, talking to the counselors, talking to your parents, as well as other people in the community. Drug and alcohol. This is one of those topics, as I said earlier on, it's a very difficult topic, but it's a very important topic that needs to be addressed. I don't remember being exposed to drugs. I always laugh with the kids that I work with to say, sometimes being a nerd is a good thing, because as I said, I was tall, scrawny, and skinny, and I wasn't in the in group, so that means I didn't know if people were smoking marijuana. It's there. The drugs are there in Zimbabwe. The drugs are active and people know about them, they do them. Alcohol is there. They even have African brewed alcohol where people make the alcohol at home, so it's there. I don't want you to think that I grew up in a bubble where there was no alcohol, there was drugs, there were drugs, but I just wasn't exposed to them because I had direction, I had a focus. I was one of those children that grew up in the church. I was influenced by going to church. I attended Sunday school. I attended youth groups. I was a minister. I was ministered to by the ministers that also expected, they had high expectations of me. I remember being a member of the Girls Brigade. That is equivalent to the Girl Guides. And I remember singing this song that said, sing, save, and follow Christ. And you know what? Those things helped me to stay away from the drugs and alcohol. I was focused. I knew I had a direction. I knew I wanted to get an education. I knew I didn't want to end up being a loser, as some people would say. But most of all, I didn't want to be an embarrassment to my parents. I didn't want to be an embarrassment to the community. I think that's what saved me from using the drugs and alcohol. The search for role models. As I said, I had my parents. Both my parents were there with me when I was raised. And I understand the pains that the teenagers are going through of having one parent that is there and another parent that either has passed on, is deceased, or is no longer in their lives through divorce, or they were never together with the parents. This is one common thread that is going on with our teenagers today, that as a result, some of them are struggling to find their role models. If you're a teenager growing up and you are a male with no male role model in your family, it's difficult to find that role model. But I say to you, there are role models in the community. There are role models around you, which is one of those things that in the coming weeks we'll be covering on where do you look for those role models? Who do you look up to that can help you become who you want to become and to do the things that are supposedly right for you to do, so that you don't go astray, so that you don't end up using the drugs, so that you can be able to get focused and to be able to have a determination and become somebody who you can never even dream or imagine you can become, because it's possible for you. conflict at home. A lot of teenagers report that there's a lot of conflict that is going on at home. And you know what? This conflict involves their parents. This conflict involves their siblings. Most of the parents, as I said, they're single parents that are in the home. So when they start dating, whether it's mom and dad, and they start dating, and they have sometimes brought home aggressive partners that actually will be verbally aggressive, physically aggressive in front of the children of those teenagers, what do? They grow up to be aggressive themselves, because that's the role model that they're seeing. We ask the teenagers to have the right language when they're among adults, when they're among themselves. But if that's not the language that they're hearing at home, children will practice, what they live at home. They actually live the right life that they are seeing and hearing at home. So as a result, role modeling is very important for the parents to have that right role model, to be able to have the right job, the right way of talking to their kids, but most of all to have a moment where they can communicate what the values that they're expecting from their teenagers are, instead of having conflict as the norm in their homes. Sex and teenage pregnancy. Again, another very important topic that from back when I was a teenager and our parents were teenagers, sex and the teenagers has been a challenge for most people. As I said, we'll be bringing in programs that are available in the communities that can be role models for other states, for other countries, to have programs that will work to prevent sex and the teenage pregnancy. It's a time when most teenagers want to experiment. I remember talking to one teenager who was saying, "Doc, my parents don't even want to talk about sex. They don't even want me to know what sex is. Neither do they want me to know about preventing pregnancy." This depends on how old you are, I'm told, because 11-year-old, she was actually 12 years old, this teenager. So of course I'm thinking, a 12-year-old asking about sex, why are you asking? Are you telling me that you're going to be involved in a sexual relationship with someone? That's not the case. They just want to know, and knowledge is power. So I think when it comes to sex and the teenage pregnancy, the more you know what the consequences are, the more you're bound to make the right choices. I grew up in an environment where sex was the talk of the day. They talked about, if you get with the guy, I honestly, the truth is, I thought that holding a guy's hand would get me pregnant. I thought if I just hold somebody's hand, I'll end up pregnant and come back home with a baby. That's how I thought. It's naive, but guess what? It prevented me from being a teenage mother. I escaped that time of teenage pregnancy and ending up being pregnant, because I believed that if I was around a guy, if I held a guy's hand, then maybe I might become pregnant. So the more you talk to your teenagers, the more the teenagers know about sex and the consequences, the better the choices will be, and the better that they will be able to make informed choices, because they need to know what the consequences are. It's not easy to have a baby. I like the programs that they have in the high schools today, where the teenagers are able to take a doll. It's actually a doll that is a baby doll that they take home with them. And what that does is, the baby doll is actually programmed where it will cry after a certain time and you have to feed the baby. It will wet the diaper at a certain time and they have to change the diaper, which we call the napkin back in Zimbabwe. They have to change that. And if you ignore that baby, it will continue to cry all night, all day. So that means the whole house is disturbed by this, baby crying. Why are they doing programs like that? They are doing it so that they bring reality to these teenagers, so that they understand and know what it is to be a teenage mother, that it's not just bringing this beautiful, pretty baby that they want to bring to the world. It's not just about being the baby mother, as they say, or the person that has the baby for that young man that you love so much, and you think that if you have a baby, then they might love you more. We will have stories here that you will get to understand and know from other teenagers that maybe might have felt pregnant, whether it was by mistake or it was by choice, thinking that the young man would be able to marry them one day, and it didn't happen that way. So hopefully that will be a lesson that we'll be able to cover for you in the coming segments of the DrStem Show.
The challenges facing our teens today mean that more than ever, we need to be there to support them and encourage them. The DrStem Show is here to provide discussions about topics that will help promote healthy relationships, self-image, and success for teens, parents, and the community. Our young people can achieve more in life than they ever dreamed possible. The DrStem Show, hosted by Dr. Stem Malatini, will foster these discussions and encourage your participation.
In-person cyberbullying. Bullying is a big topic that we're talking about in today's teenage world. There's a lot of bullying that is going on, but the interesting thing is the bullying has now moved on to a person bullying someone in person, where they actually go to you, either push you around, talk about you, remember I talked to you about how people used to laugh at me because I was tall and skinny, and they said I was ugly, and they also talked about my grades because they didn't think I was smart enough. Those little taunting things that people used to do in person, today they're talking about cyberbullying, which is something that they do on Facebook, they're doing on Twitter, they're doing on Instagram, on YouTube. What is cyberbullying? A lot of parents might be asking, and I know this is one of the challenges that the parents are facing, because most parents say, well, I'm trying to talk to my teenager and all they're doing is they're on Facebook, they're on Twitter, they're on YouTube, and I don't even know how to get in touch with them or to be able to have them to stop doing that. This is why I'm talking about this as being a challenge that most teenagers are facing today. Because guess what? They're actually fighting on Facebook, text messaging back and forth on Instagram, sending pictures of each other. And the most appalling thing is they're taking videos of each other, abusing each other, bullying each other, and posting them on YouTube. I don't even know what's worse than that. But I think that is one thing that we have to make sure that we find ways to help our teenagers, educate them, to empower them, and to instill in them the values that will allow them to realize that this is not the best way for them to be able to communicate with each other, to be able to talk about the differences that they might be having, because that's what it's about. It's about the differences that they're facing. It's about the anger that they might have because somebody else said something about me. This one took my boyfriend, or I might be facing problems at home, as we talked about the challenges. So then if you come across to me, I'm going to make sure that I blast you on Facebook or on YouTube or on Twitter. So we will be bringing more experts, as well as the teenagers themselves, that will be coming in and talking to us on more about bullying and how the teenagers can prevent them. The DrStem Show is a teen, parent, and community empowerment show. As I said in the beginning, this is a show that is going to help you to bridge that gap that is between what we understand about the teenagers. I'm hoping that the next time you hear about teenagers after watching the DrStem Show, you're not going to roll your eyes. You're actually going to have a smile on your face, because you'll be empowered and inspired at what the teenagers are doing, but most of all, what our teenagers are capable of doing with their lives. They're very smart. They know what you expect of them. They know what they want with their lives. And what we're going to do is to be able to provide them with a forum where they can actually talk to us, inspire us, and mostly learn from those community leaders, as well as international and national professionals that are out there to talk about the programs that they have. There are many programs, especially here in the Salem area, where we're broadcasting this session, that will be highlighted, so that there are also role models for programs that can be created around the country and around the world to be able to help the teenagers face the challenges that they face today, as well as encourage and empower the parents and the teachers that are helping them to become the best of tomorrow's leaders. Join me in the next few weeks where we will be talking about those 10 challenges that we talked about, as well as many more that you, the listener, and the people that are watching will be talking to us about. But mostly remember that this is a teen, parent, and community empowerment show that is geared to inspire, motivate, educate, and empower our teenagers, their parents, and those people in the communities where they live in, as well as the schools. Let's not forget the schools that they reside in. We will be talking and covering those 10 most challenging topics that we talked about today, as well as some of the topics and challenges that you, the listener and the viewer, will be bringing to us as a need that need to be covered for our teenagers to become the best of tomorrow's leaders.